I am privileged today to get to interview Mary Bailor, who is the mother of Jonathan. Yay, Mary!
It's a pleasure
Welcome.
to be here. What a lovely way to start the day.
Oh, I'm so glad. And as at Power of Moms, our whole goal is to strengthen deliberate mothers and strengthen families. And so when I meet someone like Jonathan, who's a friend, and such a positive influence on my family, I of course wanted to know, well, who is his mother and what has she done? And of course, we want to hear your secrets and maybe a little bit of embarrassing stuff about Jonathan along the way, because that's always fun, right?
Right.
So, just to start out, maybe you and Jonathan can share together a little bit about how you were really instrumental in this whole experience of him deciding to research what exactly people needed in order to be healthy, to be able to overcome diabetes and obesity. This whole movement started mainly because there was some inspiration from you. So, let's hear the story.
Okay, well, Jonathan was always interested in healthy eating. I mean, even as a little kid, up until he was about 10 years old, he was eating the Gerber baby food for dessert called Dutch apple dessert. And
Okay.
another instance, I was making his lunches for school because my kids always brown bagged it because that way I know they were getting good food. And
Okay.
my other two children are off in college, and I'm trying to stretch the dollar, so I'm making his lunch, and if I put two slices of ham, then I can get this package to last a week. Well, he complained about that. He wanted more meat. And I says, fine, then make your own lunch. And I walked away. And I think that was the
That's
beginning
awesome.
of when I know what I need or what I think I need, I'm going to make it happen, you know.
Okay.
And he didn't like all the bread on his sandwich. He wanted more of the meat. And so, okay, you go ahead and do that. So I think that was the beginning of empowerment. If something
Okay.
isn't right, if something isn't tasting or feeling right, I need to do something about it.
Okay.
Um, Being a at-home mother, uh, I worked part-time most of my
Okay.
children's life, but being a teacher, I could schedule my hours on the college level to be gone when they were gone and home when they were home. So most of the food the kids ate was homemade food, the
Yeah.
cooked food. And he was always a healthy eater. Can't complain about that. There was the time when I made 7 pork chops for the whole family, and he ate 5. And I thought, okay. And again, I think just being a loving, supportive person in his life and taking some of his concerns seriously,
Yeah.
you know, when
No,
children,
absolutely.
yeah, when children say something, there's power in those words, and they're trying to find an answer to something. And I think our job as moms is to kind of point them in the right direction. And I said, okay, well, if your friend Kyle can't bulk up like you're bulking up, something's wrong. And he would start figuring out, yeah, something must be wrong because it's working for me, but it's not working for him. So
Yes. Well, I love that just point you just touched on that you weren't trying to shape your children as far as putting your own desires or values, or I mean, values, of course, teaching your children values, but that you weren't trying to shape who they were going to become. You
mhm.
were being really careful to listen and be a guide. And I think that that's just a paradigm shift because a lot of us, as mothers, you think, okay, my kids are going to be just like me. They're
Right.
all going to love, organizing, or they're going to love the same books, or they're going to love everything I love. Instead of thinking, let me just pay attention to who already are, and I will help magnify that.
Exactly, exactly. I think each one of us brings our own gift to the world, and the people who are in our lives who love us and care for us need to nurture that gift and pull it out. And with moms, absolutely. I mean, once a woman becomes a mother, what has to take precedence is the evolution of their own children's gift to the world. And sometimes that means I put myself a little bit on the back burner because they need this time. They
Yeah,
need me.
absolutely. Oh, beautiful. Okay, Jonathan, I'm sure you have some additional ideas to
Yeah.
share here.
Well,
Make
yeah, I'll give two concrete examples of how I think my mom really helped shape sanity and all that goes along with it. And the first was indirectly. So, although my mom and also my dad have always been incredibly supportive of everything that I've done, almost to the point of absurdity, in terms of just like unquestioning, unwavering support, which is so important and critical.
Yeah.
There is, if I were to say to my mom, hey, mom, I want to eat this instead of that, she didn't just say, okay, whatever. She would kind of say, why? Or if
Okay.
I did have a question about something, it wasn't just, oh, Jonathan says it, so it goes. Like we to this day have a, it's not just because so and so said so, or it's not just because that's what's always been done. It's, is it working or not for you? And if not, and if you want to try something else. At one time, my mother actually had, I remember we actually got our family physician on the phone and we had a conversation about this because we wanted to understand scientifically if what was taking place was right and good and have some verification of that. So it was a very, she's a very smart woman, very caring woman. And when you combine that caring with also that rigor of like, sure, you can do this and we'll support you, but we need to understand why and you need to be able to explain it to us, I think is, you can see that scientific backbone getting established. And then the second thing is how my mother was always very keen on just, is it, are you happy? Is it working? Are you flourishing or not? So less about, are you adhering to some arbitrary thing, and more, are you happy? Is it working? And I think a great example of that is reading. So my mother's an English professor, among other things, and she really enjoys reading fiction. And when I was growing up, she would always encourage me to read fiction. They read to me very much, and I liked being read to when I was younger, but I still to this day do not enjoy reading fiction. However, growing up in an academic household with books all around, as soon as I discovered nonfiction, specifically rigorous academic literature, boom, like my brain exploded and I said, this is the type of reading I like. So while I wasn't a clone of her, seeing that example and being surrounded by these things, as soon as I
Okay.
found my implementation of a love of literature, it was very easy for that to take off thanks to her example.
Oh, well,
Okay.
thank you,
That's
Jonathan.
so
Yeah.
sweet. Okay, this really is like Hallmark moment right here.
Ding!
So, so Mary, I would love to hear more about how you set up the environment in your home in order to really foster that learning, the questioning. I mean, Jonathan mentioned you had a lot of books around the home. Was that something that you and your husband invested in, really buying a lot of books? Were you at the library a lot? Did you limit TV? What did you do to foster really good like dinner time discussions? Kind of what are some of just the things that maybe just seem totally natural to you that you might not even identify as something that was really awesome, but that maybe a lot of families just don't do and would love to do more?
Right. Well, I certainly would recommend family meals. And it breaks my heart to hear how many people do not sit down at
Yeah.
least several times a week to eat together. I think there's a communal aspect to eating together that is really important. And so even if maybe one or two people can't be there because of football practice or something,
Yeah.
at least make family meals a couple times a week so everybody can be
Yeah.
there and talk over food. I think that's really important. I think mom cooking is important because the
Mhm.
kids see that and they see that loving care and thoughtfulness goes into what we put in our mouths,
Yeah.
and I didn't deliberately say, oh, I'm not going to fry anything. My style of cooking was my mother's style of cooking. So, I braised things, I baked things, I roasted things, I
Okay.
also baked a lot of things, and we had a lot of desserts in our house because from our culture, I'm 100% Polish. Desserts are important, but they have to be seen as a treat and not a go-to
Okay.
food. So that
Yeah.
was not a go-to food. I think moms being home or somebody being home when a child comes home from school is really important
Yeah.
because the way they walk through that door with a smile on their face or with their feet dragging, someone's got to read that body language and work with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I don't think I deliberately ever had in mind, I want to raise perfect people. I want to raise, the next person to revolutionize how we eat. I think I wanted just to raise children who were happy and values intact, and with the sense of, to those to whom much has been given, much is expected. And so to use your gifts, use your talents to bring about the glory that is you. You know, we're all made in God's image and likeness, and we've got to manifest that.
And I want to just really echo that point, because one can say things, but one's actions often speak louder than that. So to my mother's point of, to those whom much is given, much is expected, that is so deeply internalized. And I actually think we've mentioned that on some shows separate from this show. And I remember when I graduated from high school, the present my parents gave to me was a laptop computer to take to college, which was a bigger deal back then, because computers weren't $5 like they are today. And,
Yeah.
and I remember that was back in the day when your screensaver was 3D text. And the 3D text I remember writing for my screensaver was "deserve this" when I left for college. And I mean, did really well in college, but that was always something where I feel that, and April, we've talked about this in previous shows, where we have been blessed with so much. I mean, to be watching this show that we're recording right now, we have been blessed with so much, right? We're watching this beautiful recording, and to feed our bodies and to feed our minds and to feed our spirits in a way that allows us to leverage all that we've been blessed with. Is, you know, it's not about am I a size this versus a size that, or making the scale happy. It's, am I honoring all of that which I've been given? And I think that's such an important lesson.
Yeah. So was that just part of the conversations? Was that part of the bedtime routine? Or was it just kind of, something that was woven into everyday life?
Hmm. Exactly, exactly. I mean, it's how you live. You know, it's not, let's sit down and figure out this week's menu. It's what what can I give to my family that is healthy and wholesome and conducive to creating a nice family environment. And so, sometimes in wintertime, because he was raised in Ohio, we would have a picnic supper. We would spread out the gingham tablecloth on the floor and have sloppy joes and coleslaw. And I really do I feel so sad today, because so many families are missing the beauty of family life and the fun. Everybody's just running and going places and getting this and getting that, and man,
Yeah.
just enjoy each other.
Yes.
And there's one, I will give one specific example of how I think my mom really went over and above. And during summertime, and you will remember this and continue the story once I start it, we would have games, reading programs, or various educational programs where if I did a certain number of math problems or things like that, there would be some sort of a fun reward. Like we'd go to a water park. So there was always a without being draconian and saying you must do this, there was always a positive incentive to be a positive person. And there was structure. It wasn't just like be a good person. It was, here are books to read, here are activities we can do together. And like, can you describe in better detail, because I'm foggy, the things in summer you had games that we could play to?
Right. Well, again, being a teacher and knowing how much learning drops during the 3 months of not being in the classroom.
Yeah.
For all three of the children, I always had like little lesson plans set up. But it was, when you get 10 papers done with the gold star, we're going to go to the water park. And that was always in the morning, before it was time to go outside. Just keep your brain sharp. I mean, and even I still teach at a community college, and I tell my students, as I tell my children, if you don't use it, you're gonna lose it. And a half hour, and it isn't work. And most of the time they saw it as it's not so bad. Even to this day, my daughter, who is raising my two grandchildren, her two children, will often say, boy, Grandma made us, or Nana made us sit and do schoolwork for 25 to 35 minutes. She didn't make us, we just did it. And man, that's why I graduated from a master's program. I developed my head, but even more important, I think you're developing good habits. You're teaching them to be lifelong learners, and that you've got to do something to nurture your gift. It just doesn't sit there.
And one just indirect way that April, you had mentioned, like, was this something that you planned or structured? And certainly my mother went over and above, I think, in certain ways of planning and structuring. And that's where I get my ability to do that. We're the planners and structurers in our family. However, I remember in high school, one of my buddies, one of my best friends, his name was Kyle Shoemaker. And Kyle, if you're watching this, hopefully you remember this story as well. And Kyle said, Jonathan, I have never sat around a dinner table where you guys talk. It's like hearing a symposium at a university, meaning like the conversations we would have and were not about fast forward, they weren't about what Miley Cyrus is doing next or what Paris Hilton is doing. They were about principles and ideas and values and concepts. So while we would talk about ideas and we would have these powerful, uplifting conversations, and that's something that even to this day I struggle to talk about current events or how my day was, but I love talking about ideas and principles and noble things. And I just grew up in a household where that's just what we talked about. So even just what you talk about in your household,
Yeah.
I think makes a big impression on your kids.
Oh, and one other thing just came to mind. We did have family meetings, and that was usually on a Sunday, and that was kind of neat because that's where you could bring up things that either concerned you or you wanted some input on. And we always then play a game afterward. We used to play Clue. So yeah, I really think creating an environment where people are valued and nurtured. And I think I know moms are the heart of a family. And that heart's got to be beating 100% for the people who are in my life, who most of the time I have chosen to be in our lives. And it's funny, Jonathan is our third child, and there's a 10 and an 8-year difference between him and his brother and sister. And Robert, my husband, and I, we didn't know if our family was done. We left it up to God. And 8 years after Patty was born, Jonathan came, hence the name Jonathan, which means gift from God. And he truly has been a gift from God. And again, I've been blessed to be able to be so intimately involved in 3 other people's lives, my children, and that was a sacred trust, and I've always seen it as a sacred trust. And the last thing I want to say is, both of you are too young to remember a TV show Mork and Mindy with Robin Williams. Yeah, okay. Well, you know how that always ended. He had to report back to Orson, the Supreme Commander, an observation about the life of these humans. And Mork was describing these incredible people who take care of these crying, screaming babies with dirty diapers and drive other bratty kids all over the place. But they do it with a smile on their face, and then they feed them and they care for them. And Orson said, "My goodness, how much do these people get paid to do this?" And he says, well, they don't get paid anything. And Orson said, "Why? Is what they're doing worthless?" And Mork responds, "No, what they're doing is priceless." And that's what I think mothering, parenting is. It's give your kids the chance to be all that they were meant to be.
Mary, I think you need your own podcast.
Thank you.
Seriously, you are so inspiring. My mom would love you. You are fantastic. And, as I think about what Jonathan shared and these ideas you've shared, I think a lot of the influence that you've had on your children, now your grandchildren, is just a part of being around you, what you radiate, your example, who you are. And I think that that's something really inspiring, that for a lot of mothers that I work with in my community, they weren't raised with a mom like you, or a mom like my mom. I think Jonathan and I were both very blessed, as was my husband, to have great mothers who were deliberate mothers, and I think one of the things that's really helpful and why I'm so grateful to get to interview you today, and why I'm so grateful for the internet and the ability to have a podcast or to be able to share these ideas, is because in some way we're trying to help those who maybe weren't born into a home with a mother who was really present and really cared about them, to get to see a glimpse of what it could be like, and decide that they want to be that change for their families. And so just as kind of our parting advice, What would you say to a mother who may be watching or listening and might feel maybe an ache in her heart right now because she wishes that she had had picnics on the living room floor or whatever with her family, or she wishes that her parents had even talked to her and just hadn't had the TV on all day, or she wishes she hadn't grown up in a home of abuse or divorce, or a lot of the challenges that are out there, but she desperately wants to become something wonderful and to break that pattern. What would you say?
Okay, I would say there's no mother. I don't think any mother deliberately intends to be a bad influence or to screw up their kids. We
Yeah.
all try to do the best we can. I mean,
Mhm.
you don't carry a child for 9 months. You don't go through labor. You don't get up in the middle of the night to feed and change them with the hopes of messing them up. We,
Yeah.
I don't think that's at all ever the case. We all try to love them and care for them in the best way we can. And for some other people, just because of life factors, that perhaps wasn't the ideal way. But if you raise your child and if you tell your child, and this I had come up with Jonathan, and I wished I had the line for my other two children, when I would have to make a decision to do something, I would say, honey, I really don't know if this is the right choice, like whether he could go to this party or whether he could uh, visit this college. But I am making my decision to say no out of love and concern. So you have to accept that decision out of my loving concern for you. And the other thing I would say is don't let any of your yesterdays steal any of your tomorrows. So if you didn't have the best upbringing, that doesn't give you a free pass to be unloving or uncaring or unforgiving of yourself. Each day is a new beginning, and each day is a new gift. And you take now what you know and run with it.
Beautiful. Okay, you know what? This interview has been so fantastic. I'm not even
Oh.
going to talk about any embarrassing experiences or anything, Jonathan, because I think that this is just beautiful. But maybe, Jonathan, is there any closing words that you'd like to say? Anything about your mom or any encouragement for the mothers that will be watching?
Anyone who's watching this show, I think, has taken an amazing step forward, which is, I think, understanding what being a deliberate mother or a deliberate parent or even a deliberate person is, and
Yeah,
saying, I am willing to spend time on that. It
yeah,
is, you are in the top 1%, right? Just by doing that, you have made such an important choice to live that examined life. And the number one gift I would say that both my mother and my father gave me was simply to live that deliberate and examined life. If you ask me why I do almost anything in my life, I can give you an answer. It's not just because or because this is the way it's always been done. And I feel like if you ask my mother or my father the same question, why do you do X? They will have an answer that was deliberately made. And
yeah.
so, congratulations to everyone who's watching this because I think that's such an important step in the right direction.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you. It's been a gift to me too. It's been very hopeful because you're a young mom and you care about mothering, and that gives me hope. That gives me hope. So have
We,
a
there are thousands and thousands of deliberate mothers around the world. We're just trying to gather together and help strengthen each other because I love what you're saying. None of us are perfect, but none of us are trying to mess anything up,
no,
you know?
no, doing the best we can.
We're doing the best we can. But as we learn from each other, that makes such a difference. And I just appreciate you coming on the show today. And for those who are watching, you can find Jonathan at sanesolution.com and find more about Power of Moms at powerofmoms.com. So thank you so much.
And thank you, and good luck to all of you.
See you later.
Bye bye.
Okay.